It's the secret to George Costanza, by the way. People always used to say, what is George? And I go, George is a guy who goes, I have no talents. I have no morality. I'm not attractive. I'm not successful. I'm not good at anything. I've underperformed all my life, and I'm not getting my due.
Damn nice of you to do this. Thank you.
My pleasure. Nice to come down to Santa Monica. I don't get down here all that often, but yeah, sure.
Do you feel like, I mean, this whole we call it Podcastlandia.
Yeah.
Because it's somewhere between, it's not yet become the totally cold-hearted calculus of show business, but nor is it Narnia.
Right.
Right. So it's, you know, why are you in this space, and are you having a good time?
The answer to the first half has all to do with Peter Tilden, who could probably, incite me to murder if he really put his mind to it.
Who, it should be said, sat where you sat not 3.5 months ago, and we had a time.
Yeah. No, he's well, as you know, he's an extraordinary guy and fascinating. And I met Peter by going on his radio show in 1992, 3 maybe, for a morning drive interview. And we hit it off, went out to breakfast after that. And he said, when you're done Seinfeld, I got your next TV show. And he pitched me what became Bob Patterson.
Great.
And I was laughing my ass off, and we became the best of friends. And most of my solo creative ventures, he's been a creative part of. He had this, he ended his radio career, and he said, I feel like I'm not done. I never got to do what I wanted to do. He's a great interviewer. And he said, would you do a podcast with me? I said, what is that? I have no idea what a podcast is. And he said, we're going to talk. And he based it on this thing that was really us, which was we would go on these car rides, and this always made him happy. And some maniac would do something that was crazy on the road. And instead of road rage, I would go to, really? Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Really? And he thought that was the funniest reaction to unexplainable things. And so the show became Really No Really. It was just things that we would hear about that he and I would have been talking about anyway. And he said, maybe there's something in that. And I said, look, I've got some time. I don't want to lift a finger for this. You tell me what you need me to do, and I'll show up and do it. He does all the research. He does all the booking. He sends me some articles the night before. I read them. I compile a bunch of BS questions, and I go in. But the reason I'm still there is I'm having a blast. We are meeting fascinating people. I am really learning something in every episode, and I'm hanging out with my buddy. And so it's been a complete joy. But if you ask me to articulate anything about the world of podcast, I would be the least articulate guy, because I don't really follow anything else. And I don't know even how we are doing. I have no idea. I mean, I every now and then I read some lovely comments.
Well,
so
just
somebody's listening.
Call
so.
iHeart and ask them.
Yeah, right.
Because they will tell you.
They will absolutely tell us. And they know. So.
It should be said, too, that in another active, just unimaginable, unscriptable triangulation, back when you and Peter were driving along saying, really, he was writing ads. Yeah. And Chuck was reading some of those ads with your friend, this case on erectile dysfunction.
Oh, yeah.
Which I understand you'd be the go-to guy. Chuck.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Right?
I know everything you need to know about it. I'm not at liberty to discuss it, but yeah.
But if you need to hang a wet towel somewhere.
Yeah.
I can help you.
There you go.
So, when I heard him on the radio years ago, my buddy Chuck, who I've known as long as you've known Peter, doing these ads that this guy Peter wrote. And then for similar reasons, he and I sort of Forrest Gumped our way into, well, everybody's doing a podcast, and it'd be rude not to.
Right.
And then we're doing one, and then Peter's sitting there, and then I'm on your podcast, and then we meet, and now you're coming from your workout here, and merrily we roll along.
And there we go. Which was shit when I did it and fantastic when I didn't. Which is the story of my life.
How early in your theatrical career was that?
Oh my God, that was a big surprise kicker offer. So, I grew up only when I decided, boy, I'd like to pursue this acting thing. It's because I was growing up in New Jersey. I fell in with the theater kids. We would go over the river every weekend and go see Broadway shows because it was like $1 to stand in the back if you were a student. And I got it into my head that I would really love to work in the theater in New York. That was my end-all, be-all. And I was really, I thought, realistic about that ambition, thinking, well, you don't just do that. I'll have to bum around in stock shows or touring companies but maybe by the time I'm in my mid to late 30s, I might get something on Broadway. Merrily We Roll Along was 1980-81. I was 19 when I booked it, and I was 20 when I performed it.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was the first one? That was the...
Yeah, I mean, I had been doing commercials. I had done a little bit of small television projects, but you know, it was a very young, unestablished career, and then that just leapt out of nowhere. And I kind of know why I got it. They had it in their head, excuse me, in that initial production, because the main characters de-age. The show goes backwards, so they start in their 40s and they wind up in their early 20s. And Hal Prince wanted the end of the show to resonate in a way that the rest of the show didn't. He wanted the audience to understand the purity of the goals and the ambitions of these young people. So he decided he would create it as if it was a school production that was all being performed by kids. He really wanted everybody to be between 13 and 18 years old. There were many of us that had creeped a little beyond that. I think the oldest member of the company was 24. When the
Genius, by the way, Hal Prince.
Oh, absolutely. And but I got cast as the oldest character in the show, a guy, sort of a Mike Todd-like producer, who de-ages from 65 to 45 over the course of the show. And I had, you know, I grew up on Jackie Gleason and Zero Mostel, and I knew what those sort of oversized New York types looked like. And at 17, I started losing my hair. So by 20, I had a good little bald spot going up there. And he went, I got a kid that's going bald.
This is gold, Jerry.
You betcha. And so that was surely part of the alchemy that got me the job. But yeah, so at 20, I made the Broadway
So
debut.
what was the, do you remember the inciting incident or the moment when you were standing in the back watching? What was the show that first made you go, huh?
Oh, the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it extremely well. So for a number of reasons, I was really focused on magic as a kid. I really loved magic, and I was kind of serious about it. And I read and I studied, and I was doing little magic shows. And I was thinking, oh, I'm going to be a magician. And I was very interested in close-up magic. I wanted the magic to be in my hands, not in the box. And I went to Tannen's magic camp in New York City.
The biggest.
Yeah, when I was 12 years old. And the magician in residence looked at my hands and went, not for you.
Because you can't palm a card.
I can't palm a card. I have really small hands. And to this day, I can't. A standard size playing. There are specialty cut cards now that I could probably have worked with, but a standard playing card, if I go to palm it, there's a corner peeking out somewhere.
Right.
So, and around the same time, I was dealing with the theater kids and going to the theater. So, in 1972 or 3 is when Pippin started on Broadway, and I had never seen magic incorporated into storytelling in anything. And if you saw the original production of Pippin, the curtain goes up and there's a wall of smoke and these disembodied hands are moving about in the smoke, and then Ben Vereen comes in and goes, join us. And there's magic tricks, and there's the to flour, leave your cheese to sour.
Yeah. Yep.
And literally when he came through and did that, and these hands started to morph into bodies, and they're singing, we've got magic to do, I went, ha! I want to be Ben Vereen. I could be Ben Vereen. And it struck me as I was sitting there, and I know this sounds like moron now, but it never occurred to me that the whole damn thing's an illusion. We're sitting there, we're looking into a black box, and we're going on these rides. We're believing everything. Oh, this guy is not that guy. He's a king of Athens now, and we're, and these amazing illusions. And I went, I could do this. I could make this illusion, I think. And that was it. And I went to see Pippin over 20 times as I was growing up. And and put all my eggs in that basket. I came home from Pippin, and 2 weeks later, I was in both voice lessons and dance lessons.
Wow. So that was this is the toolbox I need.
Yeah.
I'm going to fill it. Mm-hmm. So dance, singing.
Yeah. Whatever. Whatever. It was also, as a kid doing school theater, you're doing a lot of musicals.
Was there a teacher in your world
Yeah.
who was...
So my high school teacher was a guy named Bob Lampf, Lampf. Why? I don't know.
From the Boston Lamps.
Yeah, right.
Like to buy a foul, Bob.
Bob and I are still friends to this day. Bob was he did all the dramas at the high school, and as I was in junior high looking at the high school, he had a number of really talented kids. So some of those shows were really quite good. And I was already in awe of him by the time I got there. And he took me under his wing. I got a lot of great roles, but more importantly, he actually made me start directing stuff. And he said, "You're going to be one of those guys. You're going to be." He just said it. He said, "You're going to be one of the talents that makes it." And that was the wind beneath my wings.
Did you believe him?
Yes and no. So what I have discovered through 40 years of therapy is there. So my real name is J. Scott Greenspan, and there is a J. Scott Greenspan who invented a Jason Alexander. The Jason Alexander part of me had to believe him because it's the only way I could survive. If I didn't hold the idea that I can do this, I was going to crumble, because Jay Greenspan was a brittle, scared, feeling very unworthy child. Never enough. And so he compensated, and what some would say overcompensated, by creating this avatar of Jason Alexander who believed he was unstoppable. And it was a false persona, a false avatar that I'm literally over 40 years, have tried to understand how they speak to each other and where the truth of who I am and what I can be, and somewhere in that beautiful alchemy.
Do you think there's some sort of parallel to be made between the way musical theater evolved, 30s and 40s up through current day, with the way sitcoms have evolved, in the way that maybe something that always seemed to present a moral, something that always seemed to be fairly one-dimensional on its face, right, morphed into like the irony of the show that made you truly famous, and some of those other things. I was just thinking about it the other day, and wondering if these different media, right, influence each other in some way.
Well, here's what I think they all share. The people that create them and make their way in them, there's three phases. The creation, where everybody goes, "Oh, I see what that is. Oh, we could do that." The sustenance, the sucking out the nectar, where everybody goes, "Okay, so Cheers works. Let's do a restaurant. Let's do an office. Let's do a bar," and get the same formula. And because we see where the sweet spot is, let's savor it. Let's get the nectar out of there. And then the third phase is, let's innovate again. So what happened to me in sitcom, I caught the beginning of the wave that has led to the best comedy being The Bear. And if you watch most episodes of The Bear, you go, is this funny?
Right.
I'm like stressed out of my mind watching this. Is really tough stuff. Where now in popular television comedy, or the stuff that's being written about that is sort of leading the creative wave, the laugh is not the important thing. The joke is not the important thing. There's a madness to it. It's exploring the madness of modern life. Seinfeld started to touch on that, but with a comedian sense of where's the joke. So we nudged it forward at an interesting time. I had nothing to do with it. The guys nudged it forward, and I went for the ride.
You might have been there. Yeah.
But I think that happens in all art forms. I think, there's an innovation, and then everybody goes, I can do that. And they do that. And you get some very interesting variations on a theme, and then everybody gets tired of doing that. And what I'm waiting for in musical theater in New York is to stop doing a sideways movie. Stop looking to popular films or popular pop culture to, create the next thing. So I was just talking to a producer friend yesterday who's got a musical that's just about to go into production about Louis Armstrong. And I go, fantastic.
That sounds
Didn't
great.
come from a movie. Oh,
Yeah.
that's and yet it's a true story. It's a real story. I see where your source material is, but you're creating something new. So sitcoms in particular. Well, as we started, we're talking about podcasting.
Yeah.
Somebody had an idea. They went, let's have a celebrity talk to a celebrity. Let's have look what we're doing, Right. And there's a proliferation of that. And then we are all sitting here going, okay, what is this podcasting thing going to become? What's it really going to become? Is it going to become a substitute for literature? Is it going to become a substitute for what we think of as television or news and information? Where is it? Because right now, for the most part, and I include you and me and all our wonderful colleagues, for the most part, we are doing some hodgepodge of filler, a brew of entertainment, human interest, and a little bit of news and information, and there's a shit ton of it. Nobody knows.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering when somebody's going to draw a line between a Sondheim and a Larry David to a Joe Rogan, like prime movers
Okay.
in their media who did things that either hadn't been done before or that deliberately challenged the audience in a way they hadn't been challenged.
Sure.
I don't remember which one of you guys said it, but somebody was being interviewed early on Seinfeld and just said, look, there will be no lessons.
Oh, hugging, no learning.
There'll be no hugging, there'll be no learning.
Yeah.
And in a vacuum, in and of itself, who cares? But because everything that preceded it had been predicated on hugs and learning.
Right.
Right? That's what made it a tough sell. And ultimately a risky proposition that if it paid off would yield the same kind of rewards as Sunday in the Park with George.
Absolutely.
Or the Joe Rogan Experience, all of which triggered these whole new things.
Yeah.
So to be on the vanguard of that, as a frustrated magician who couldn't palm a card,
Right.
but somehow figured out how to pick up 4 aces.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So let's stick with the podcast for a bit then,
Sure.
because for better or worse, that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
And I just I've listened to maybe 4 or 5 of what you guys have done since Peter came on. It could be huge, Jason.
It could, yeah.
Your specific thing really could be if it catches fire.
Right.
And I don't know why it wouldn't.
Because we're a boat in an armada. I mean,
There's that.
It's very hard to get attention. First of all, I'm bad at this. I don't really do social media anymore. I'm happy to be here with you, but I get lots of invitations, and I go, part of it is promotion, both on our end and on iHeart's end. But iHeart has 8,000 podcasts.
Oh, what are there, 4.5 million now, something like that?
Yeah,
It's a lot.
And I don't think they know why the ones that are working work. I think they believe it is because there's a personality on it that is appealing to a large population. I don't think anybody, us included, is doing anything that anybody else is. We're basically doing a sideways version of how stuff works, you know.
True enough.
You know, and so what's interesting about ours is how interesting it is. We are. I think Peter and I represent a fairly good cross section of guys who go, yeah, what is that? That's weird. What is that about? That doesn't sound right. That can't be right. And then we get surprised. What's been great about our podcast is we go in with preconceptions and we get our heads spun around a lot. So I remember specifically the guy I had heard, I think I mentioned it to Peter, and I said, we should look into this. I had read that there was a team of scientists that were trying to recreate the woolly mammoth. They wanted to bring back the woolly mammoth. And we get the guy who's heading the project, and I go, great, we're gonna just have fun with this. Going, what is wrong? Have you not seen Jurassic Park? What?
Yeah.
You
Spoiler
don't know
alert.
this is? Are you playing God there with
isn't
your
gonna
little
be
woolly
happy.
mammoth? Oh, next it's gonna be the raptors and the right. And he comes in, and I go, so what are you doing? You trying to recreate the wool? What are you doing? And he goes, we're not trying to recreate the woolly mammoth. I go, you know? No. He goes, we're trying to save the permafrost and the elephant. And I went, say what now? And he said, look, there is 2% of difference between the DNA of a woolly mammoth and the modern elephant. But in that 2%, it allowed the mammoth to exist in harsh, cold climates. If the elephant stays in the climate that it's in the area that it's in the territory, it has about 20 years left of viability on this planet because its habitat is being diminished. It is still being poached into extinction. It is existentially threatened where it is. If we can crossbreed elephant and mammoth DNA, we can move elephant populations to the permafrost. It will save the elephant, and it will actually save the permafrost, because one of the reasons that the permafrost is disappearing is it used to have herds of heavy animals tromping on it, compressing that ice, you know. And he said, we can actually save both. That's our goal. And I went, welcome to our show.
Wow.
We're talking with, you know.
I'd like to go ahead and retract the question.
Yeah.
Let's just go ahead and edit that out.
So a lot of our show is that surprise of thinking you know, coming in with the asshole attitude of, okay, you idiot, what are you doing? And then having our heads spun around. In that sense, I think we represent all those wonderful human interest stories that are the only reason people are still buying magazines and newspapers and you know, the clickbait stories where we look at it and go, what's really going on there?
By the way, the iHeart network has 32,220.
There you go. Yeah.
So 32,222 other podcasts besides Really No Real.
The Armada.
Yeah.
The Armada. Wow. I just heard, what else did I listen to? The clairvoyants, the fortune tellers.
The guy who busts the fraudulent psychics, Bob Nygaard.
I was fascinated by that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about it because I know as a magician, like that's still a big part of your identity.
Sure, yeah.
You know, whose idea was it to bring this guy on, and just how big is the fortune telling business in this country?
It's a $3 billion a year industry. Nygaard himself has recovered up to, I think, $125 million worth of clients, you know, savings. It's huge. And, you know, that started, I think that started with Peter and I having a conversation. We were driving around somewhere, and we saw one of these little storefront psychic things, and I went, that's rent on that space is no kidding.
Right.
How are they? It's got to be a front for something, right? It's the grandmother of the Don is probably sitting in the little chair in the window, and so we started going, how can somebody who goes $50 and I'll read your palm, how are they paying for these things? And Peter goes down rabbit holes. He starts researching something, and he's got ADHD, which is another episode that's about to break, where we interviewed a couple. The guy has ADHD, and he and his wife won Amazing Race about 2 years ago.
How did you get
And
him
he
to stay
goes,
on the topic while you were talking?
I got to tell
him?
you,
How did they finish the race?
He talks about how he does it because he wrote a book called ADHD is a Superpower. But Peter has some of it, and he goes down these rabbit holes, and he takes the idea of how are they affording that building into, how are they making this money, to finding out how much money they're making, to find out how many people they're bilking, to finding out there's a guy who's busting them. And he's busting them. The reason Bob Nygaard is so interesting is because if these victims go to the police go, well, you're stupid.
Right.
You gave him $100,000. Get out of here. I got real... And Bob goes, these are crimes. These are victims. And he's one of the few guys that is really looking after them.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Because, the other thing I learned in that episode that made me go, really? Was, you just mentioned the Don, like a front for a Don. Mm-hmm. Well, in fact, there's a massive community of fortune tellers.
Yeah.
And they kind of police themselves in the way the mafia, right? The five families would come together,
absolutely,
have a chat.
Yeah.
They discuss territory. They discuss disputes. They meet out properties and whatnot. It's like a gypsy kind of union.
You bet.
And it's for real, man.
And it is, it's as serious as a heart attack. If you break that, the one thing Bob said to us is, I'll tell you guys the name of the organization. Please don't repeat it, because I do not want to get these guys. Right. I can take apart the weak ones, but if they think I'm a threat, I got a problem.
I actually think that episode, it works like a public service announcement almost, right? Because, when you get ripped off, when you get conned or swindled, you don't really talk about it. For the same reason you don't go to the cops, because they look at you and go, hey, dummy.
Right, there's a lot of shame involved, yeah.
But people need to understand that it's the frog in the boiling water. You don't walk in and they say that'll be $100,000. Right. They do hot readings, they do cold readings, they earn your trust. Maybe it's $30 or $40 for the service, and then there's curses that get lifted, and it just, to hear him talk about the amount of time these cons,
the long game. Yeah,
it is
that they play.
Long
Are
game.
you sure this isn't Scientology that you're talking about?
It's a good question, because where do you draw the line between a magic trick, a con, a real, something that's real / supernatural? When you think about what Houdini did really with his life,
right?
The
busting, you mean? Yeah.
The busting. He was the original. Yeah. And then of course you guys didn't talk about my favorite. I think he's still alive. See if he is, Chuck. I don't know. His name's James Randi.
He passed away.
Did he?
Yeah.
James Randolph.
Yeah.
He had a standing offer.
You bet.
Of $1 million to anyone
who could recreate any sort of paranormal ability under the most minimal scientific circumstances.
And so anyway, I just say all of this because as we're speaking right now, people are handing over vast sums of money.
You bet.
Sad people, broken people, desperate for guidance. And this giant syndicate is laughing all the way to the bank.
You bet.
And you are in a new medium that has virtually nothing in common with the musical theater we've discussed or the sitcoms that made you famous. And yet this could actually, all of this could come together in a way that is so useful to people that years from now, we're going to be gobsmacked by it. Maybe.
Well, I will tell you, a lot of Really No Really is intended for and I think results in a good deal of fun. But the vast majority of them have become profoundly... Another one that Peter and I started with, and again, it's some of Peter's savant ability to find the right guest, too. But I had read an article that the town of Newton, Massachusetts, maybe, for the last 248 years, every year, they burn Benedict Arnold in effigy. And they have a big parade, and it's a big blowout,
Uh-huh.
And I went, wow, talk about holding a grudge. I mean,
Yeah, let it go, Newton.
I would imagine most of these people don't know who the hell Benedict Arnold is. And so I said to Peter, maybe something about grudges or feuds or, something. What's the world's longest feud we could do? And he comes back and he says, I found the guy who runs the International Institute of Forgiveness. I went, what the hell is that?
The IIF?
International Institute of Forgiveness. And this, I can't remember his name, but this lovely gentleman comes on Zoom and, we're beginning to have this conversation. Again, we start kind of snarky. And 10 minutes into this conversation, Peter and I are weeping because I got to a place where I said, Professor, I understand, I hear you, the power of forgiveness. But what if the guy that I'm supposed to forgive doesn't deserve it? He's not sorry. He's not contrite. Why would I forgive him? And the guy doesn't bat an eye and he goes, oh, Jason, you totally misunderstand. Forgiveness is not something you do for that person. That's the gift you give yourself. And I went, well, I don't understand that. I don't understand what you mean. And he goes, okay, well, think about someone who has wronged you. And because when you think about them, you feel your blood pressure go up a little bit. You get stressed out, right? Changes. If you had to eat something right now, you'd either anger eat or you wouldn't eat. It's going to interrupt your sleep. It's going to consume your working thoughts. You've had all these reactions. It's changing you physiologically. It's consuming your emotional energy. It's not doing a damn thing to him. He's fine. He's not worried about all this. He goes, if you can get to a place where you look at that person and go, what happened to me had nothing to do with me. He's broken. He's got the problem. He might not even know he's got the problem. But me holding on to this is not serving him, and it's sure as hell not serving me. So I choose to let it go. I choose to say, yes, it happened. I'm a person now that knows this because of it. You will have to deal with the consequences of who you are, but I'm letting it go. And he's starting to tell us this, and Peter and I are just tearing up because I went, oh my God, of course it's a gift to us. I never thought about that. And so that is sort of typical in a very potent, powerful way of almost every episode. We talk to people who are training their dogs to speak with buttons on the floor, and you go, you crazy people, what the hell is wrong with you? And then you start to hear things that these animals are communicating, whether it's an accident or not. It makes us look at that animal in a different way. It makes us consider our relationship and our responsibility to that animal in a different way.
Because the buttons aren't, hey, I'm hungry, or hey, I'm horny. It's like, where are you going?
Well, that was one of the ones,
a
Christina, and I can't remember her last name, but she had a dog, I think named Bunny. And I said to them, she had taught Bunny about 100 words at this point. And I said, do you ever run a videotape when you and your husband leave the house? And she goes, oh, it's not good. It's not good. We left the house, and she's obviously agitated, and she's running around. She goes to the buttons and goes, Christina, where? And goes to the door and howls and then calls out for the guy, Josh, where? And you go, this dog has no way of understanding. It has not been abandoned, and it has no concept of time. It just knows that the source of its comfort, its connection to its pack, is gone. And it is suffering to some degree because of that. And you go, oh my God, every time I walked out the door when my dog was home, could I have done something? What do I owe this creature that I have said, I will take care of you, I will provide for you, and we have this symbiotic relationship where you give me love and acceptance and joy and blah. So it's like we try to be silly, and then we go, oh my God.
See, this is what I'm getting at, man. We're on a wheel. History is a wheel, but I think the human condition is too, and I think in our industry, our media is a reflection of our times.
Sure.
And so we've talked about Oklahoma. We've talked about Sunday in the Park with George, Father Knows Best, Cheers, into Seinfeld, where no hugging, no learning.
Right.
think about where you are. Like, think about what you're doing right now and everything you just described. It's an affirmative shift. It's not saccharine sweet or earnest. You're not doing a PSA.
Right.
You're not sitting down to have a very special moment with the man who's saving elephants. You're getting into it with a smile and a wink and a nudge and what are you doing? And then the conversation finds its own way. But in my view, it's a reflection of where we are. Our country doesn't need a big blast of irony at the moment. We don't need it, right?
Correct.
We don't.
Correct.
I don't think.
Right.
But nor do we need a lecture or a sermon,
Right.
or a very important message. You guys are like really flirting with and adjacent to something that I think is conspicuously absent for a lot of people, which is a connection through humor and something meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Even it's the sublime and the ridiculous. When you guys talk about why stalls in restrooms don't go to the floor, I'm immediately confronted with two thoughts. Who gives a damn? And yeah, why don't they?
Why don't they?
It turns out I give a damn.
Right.
And I care about my dog, and I care about people being swindled by fortune tellers, you know?
Yeah.
So you, I don't know.
Yeah,
man.
You're saving the world. I think
Yeah,
is
you
the
might
way
have
to
a
say it.
tiger by the tail.
Yeah, it is watch this one. Oh my God, this is why they pay me the small bucks. It comes back to the Pippin thing. Pippin is a lot of Sturm and Drang and magic and dance and theater and theatricality and spectacle to wind up with three nearly naked people on a stage, a man, a woman, and a little boy, with the bare walls of the theater exposed, no lights, no makeup, nothing theatrical at all to go, I don't know what this is, but it's the only real thing. And it's not exciting, but this is where I want to be. And I think that is some version of that would be very healthy for the world right now. We live in this crazy world where so much of our media, I wish I could take everybody that owns media by the throat and go, what are you doing? You know damn
Start
well.
with the lapels, Jess.
You're pissed.
Get it by the lapels, and if that doesn't
better?
work, then move to the throat.
Yeah,
if you
see,
start with the throat,
I studied
you have nowhere
Krav
to go.
Maga, not judo. Judo, you grab by the lapels.
Yes.
That I know. Yeah, right. But it's to go. Why have you decided to make your fortunes on the aggravation and fears of just decent people? When you know damn well at the end of the day, no matter what it looks like, most good people want the exact damn thing. We want to feel safe and secure. We want to be loved and loved. We want respect. We want something to do. We want the hope that tomorrow could even be a better day than today. And we want it for everybody else as well. So why are you trying to show us stuff that makes us believe that the guy across the street is my enemy?
The elevation
and that
of
there is
angst.
no humanity in him that resembles mine. Yes, is it exciting? Sure, because we go anger and fear and jealousies, they're hot. They're hot. They're the stuff of Pippin. It's war, religion, sex, yeah, try it. You got to try it. You got to try it. But there's nothing there. There's nothing there. And I just want to, every time I find myself talking to a group of people that we seem to be not on the same page, and I go, really? We're not on the same page?
Really?
Don't you want to go home tonight and just be surrounded by your friends and your family and your children and have a nice meal and feel good in your own skin and go to bed going, yeah, tomorrow could be a nice day? I said, every person I know wants exactly that. Why are we not acknowledging that, sharing that together? We may disagree on the things that will get us there. And the conditions for which we achieve that state may be slightly different based on who we are, where we live, what the conditions of our surroundings are. But we can't make room for those differences in order to achieve this thing that we all want. And that's what just drives me to distraction right now.
What if it's expectations? What if What if the consequence of our media making the choices that they've made has resulted in a false sense of what's coming out? Well, back to Pippin. Mm-hmm. This is Pippin. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the Pippin episode. But there's in the battle with Charlemagne.
Yeah.
Right? His first taste of battle was not as advertised.
Right.
Remember what he said?
I thought there'd be more plumes.
Exactly right. I thought there would be more plumes. That's it, man.
Yeah.
We so many people I know who are unhappy are basically saying that to themselves in their own way. Mm-hmm. I was expecting something bigger, more, funnier.
Yeah.
Right? I thought there would be more plumes. That's the title.
Is that all there is?
Is that all there is? That's it. It's, what are your expectations when you stand in the back of a theater as a kid? What are your expectations when you look at the audience as a magician? What are your expectations if you're Larry David, or if you're Stephen Sondheim, or if you're Peter Tilden trying to figure out the next episode, or if you're Chuck Klausmeyer doing the same thing? Mm-hmm. It is one boat in an armada, but man, so many people are in the water looking for a lifeboat.
Yeah.
They're looking to climb aboard, you know?
Yeah.
I've never seen it. I don't think people were looking for must-see TV on Thursday night, but boy, when they found it, they knew what they liked.
Because it was, that evening, started with a bunch of people in a working class bar to these screwed up midlife New York pseudo-intellectual wannabes, and living the madness of a big city that is overwhelming them.
Too Jewish, as I recall.
Very, very Jewy, very Jewy. And then into a bunch of young 20-somethings at the start of their life. And then I don't even remember what the big hour was at 10 o'clock, but it was like, this is us. And it's a bunch of goofy people all trying to figure out the same questions. It's the same questions. Do I fit? Do I matter? Is there a spot for me? Do I have a community?
Oh, watch this. Okay, so this is why I get paid the small bucks too. The podcast Landia, as it exists right now, is must-see TV on Thursday nights, 20-some years ago. Mm. It's the population realizing that something that's offering a connection for them, to them, in some way, maybe not as broad as broadcast, but it's out there. It's in the armada. Mm-hmm. Maybe not that boat, but try that one. Because in the end, what we try and do in our own little way, you guys are doing, it's exactly what my friend John Hendricks did when he started the Discovery Channel from his garage in 1985. Yeah. One mandate, one goal. He came at it in a lot of different directions, but the prime directive was satisfy curiosity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You guys are doing that, but you're also amusing yourself in the way only two old asshole buddies can do.
Absolutely.
And that, I wouldn't underestimate that either. I bet a lot of people who listen because they either recognize, appreciate, or envy your relationship with Peter.
Oh, that's very sweet.
It is
Thanks.
Sweet of me.
Yeah.
But I meant it.
Yeah.
I meant it because I saw it.
No, you get a sense of, this weird brotherly best friend, but the essence of us is we just make fun of each other all the time, knowingly, and then we wait longingly for the guy to take us off our own horse,
And he will.
You got there. There you go. So,
I also love the fact that you're broadcasting out of a kind of circus tent. I explain to people the role of Howie Mandel in your life and where are you when you do this podcast, and just give people a sense of what you're surrounded by, because it looks like the future.
Howie Mandel is a really smart business guy. I mean, I've learned more about Howie in the last couple of years. So as a struggling comic, Howie he bought, carpet warehouses. I mean, he He's a businessman. So Howie has bought a bunch of empty warehouses right outside the Van Nuys airport where he cooks things up, so he has his podcast studios there, because where else do you want to do podcasting except right under the flight path?
Yeah, give me a flight path.
He shoots little video projects there, and he uses it as an incubator. He's really interested in technologies, emerging technologies. So he's got a company called Proto over there, which is doing this sort of almost three-dimensional holographic version of Zoom, where someone's got a phone on their end, but they appear in a box a million miles away, and everything except touching them seems possible. But Howie's bizarre presence is all over that studio. So we're doing our shows, and Howie goes, "What are you guys doing?"
I know. I was there.
We witnessed that.
And you got Howie crap all over. I've got in our studio. There's a Howie pillow where if you rub the grain one way, it's Howie bald. The other way, it's Howie with hair. It's Howie memorabilia. It's just the strangest collection of. I have one room in my house where it's a cacophony of my shit. It's
right.
just Howie's got 5 warehouses of that cacophony. Yeah.
Warehouses.
And he is the most delightful 5-year-old I've ever met. Nobody loves a practical joke more than Howie. Nobody loves a non-PC joke more than Howie. And he's got the biggest heart in the world. And he's such a people person. He always wants to be around everybody. But if you can't
just
touch
don't
him,
hug him. Yeah,
right. Don't hug him. No touching. Bad touch.
He's such just a fascinating persona, and I was always a fan. But part of the joy of the podcast is getting to know him a little bit more over the last couple of years. You're right. It's the clown car just pulled up.
Well, these people, they come into our lives. I mean, some people feel like planets because they're in a kind of predictable orbit. We all have our own solar systems, and we all think we're the sun in it. But then there are these asteroids. There are these comets. There are these just disruptors.
Yeah.
And thank God for them. Because they shake stuff up.
You bet.
And they create opportunities where
and
there
he's
were
not
vacuums.
done, man. He's got stuff going. Where I really got interested in Howie was he did an episode. He was the first celebrity we had on our show.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, and we've only done a handful because we try not to just have a celebrity for celebrity's sake. You came on because Peter was specifically interested in the fact that you had created and released a film single-handedly. You did something that really isn't done anymore.
Right.
And then we get into other stuff. But I had read an article where a new opera or ballet had opened in Germany, and the critic gave it a scathing review. And so the opera or ballet director confronted them and smeared feces in their face. And I thought, well, really?
Half star.
Yeah. And so I wanted to do something on criticism and judgment, and and Peter goes, well, Howie's the longest serving judge on television. He's on AGT. He's been there 18 years. And I went, yeah, is that the right one? Is that really? And he came on, and we really just talked about the impact of judging people at this really delicate point in their lives. You create possibilities, you destroy possibilities. And I said to Howie, you don't sing. Who are you to judge a singer? Who the f*** are you?
Yeah.
And but he had this really.
What are you doing?
We had a great conversation, and he finished it by saying, I've never really looked at these questions this way. This is really. We didn't get into any of the, none of the other work that he does. We just stayed on topic. So,
I want to, if you don't mind, since you brought him up, the first project that you worked on with Peter was it was Bob Peterson?
Bob Patterson.
Patterson.
Yeah.
So I just loved what I saw of that.
Oh, thanks.
And I don't understand why. Well, who cares why?
Yeah.
We'll never know.
No.
But that character reminded me so much of the old QVC days and the old, the motivational speaking world.
Sure.
Which, by the way, is a world unto itself, just as
Oh,
surely
boy.
just as surely as the fortune
You
tellers
betcha.
are.
Yeah, you bet.
So I want to be respectful of your time. We've been talking an
No,
hour,
fine.
but all right. But in some way, can you make that character triangulate with everything we've been talking about, from magic to hope to swindling,
Sure.
to whatever it is you're doing today? Because I know you're out there on the circuit today as well.
Yeah, I mean, we made such hay out of a failed TV show. What we discovered, so Bob Patterson, for people that rightfully have never heard of it,
It was on After 10 Speed and Brown Shoe, as I recall.
we should have only had such a good lead-in. The show is about a guy who was billed as America's fourth leading motivational speaker.
That's it.
And thought himself the heir apparent to Anthony Robbins, and in fact the better of Anthony Robbins, and makes his living telling you what's wrong with your life, why you're messing up your own life, and how to improve it. But he goes home and he can't tie his shoes. I mean, he's got an ex-wife that's running roughshod over him. He's got a son that's 500 pounds and sitting on a couch. So we thought that was great material. And you're right, there's a variety of reasons why the show didn't quite catch on. Half of them I know, and half of them I'm sure I'll never know. But while we were doing that show, we would have to do all the promotion stuff where we would go out and do the O&Os and the upfronts. And ABC said, hey, could you do like a 2-3 minute actual seminar as Bob Patterson? So Peter and I came up with, little 2 and 3 minute things about, you are the you in the universe, and all the aphorisms, and they always killed. They killed. So when Bob Patterson went down, we said, there's something left to do with this world that I know we can do. So Peter and I went back to the drawing board and we created a character named Donnie Clay. Donnie Clay shows you the way. And we started doing corporate entertainment shows where they would never be told Jason Alexander was coming. They were told Donnie Clay, America's fourth leading motivational speaker, was going to show up. And he was going to do a 1 hour motivational seminar with them. And it was a comedy show, but all wrapped in the tropes of this thing. It went from a corporate show to a Vegas show. We would do it for regular crowds. And it is nothing but BS. There is nothing there. Nothing. And people would come up to us afterwards and go, I learned a lot. And it was things like, this was one of my favorite examples. So we did a thing on money, and, and Donnie Clay would make this claim of, I'm going to change your financial fortunes today. In 4 words. 4 words, I'm going to change. I can increase your income 10%, 25%, 50%, maybe even 100%. 4 words. Not a program, not a book, not something you have to take home and study tonight or work on for the next 3 months. You can go out tomorrow with these 4 words and change your life. And I'd bring a guy up and I go, you're going to be my avatar for this. Now, let's say, just so I know what my target is, how much money are you making right now? And the guy would whisper something in my ear, and I'd say, well, that's great. Good for you. That's good money. But, if you wanted some luxury items like toilet paper or an orange, you might want to. And I go, let's say I could do it. Let's say if
Never confuse the two, by the way.
If I could, what did you want? What would you want to have? Come on, think out of the box. What would you want? I'd want a yacht. And the minute he'd say I want a yacht, I'd smack him across the face. What are you doing with a yacht? Do you know what kind of a problem the yacht? A yacht is a sinkhole for a money. Okay, and I work it all up, and I finally get the audience into this thing where I'd say, you know what we're talking about? We're talking about FU money. That's what you want. So you got to be able to say it. If you can't say it, you can't get it. So when I ask you what kind of money you want, what do you say? Yeah. And they'd yell it back at me, and I go, okay, it's taking a turn now. And I go, okay, here they are. Here are the 4 words. Get out your pens. Get out your paper. Here they are. Get ready to change your life. Increase your income 50, 100%. Here are the 4 words. Get a second job. Well, of course, huge laugh. But people would come up and go, you're right.
Yeah, he makes a good point.
You're right. I go, yeah, technically we're right. But so what you're talking about is this notion that happens in magic, that happens in our business, that happens in that world of people essentially going, I don't know what I need to know. I don't have what I need to have. I'm not enough. I can't dream it big enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not educated enough. I'm not experienced enough. It's the secret to George Costanza, by the way. People always used to say, what is George? And I go, George is a guy who goes, I have no talents. I have no morality. I'm not attractive. I'm not successful. I'm not good at anything. I've underperformed all my life, and I'm not getting my due. I should be doing better than I'm doing. But it speaks to all of that somehow in a book or in a relationship or in a class or in a seminar, someone's going to go, here it is. Here's your answer. And if you just do this, it's all going to fall into place. And we never learn that anything you want to do, you can do. If you're willing to put in the effort to do it, you can do it. You can get there. It doesn't matter if you're undereducated. You can get the education you need. You can get the experience you need. You made a whole show out of that. You'd show up at these places with these sometimes incredibly difficult, challenging technical jobs, and they'd show you and you'd throw yourself into it. And by the end of it, you could probably do it the next day if you had to. And this notion that this guru is going to give you the answer when, as Pippin would say, the answer was here all the time. I'm the answer. And what Donnie Clay was really doing was, in a completely comedic way, it's the Wizard of Oz. You had everything you wanted. You had everything you needed. And if it wasn't right where you are, it probably wasn't worth it anyway. And I think that's again, in a sort of global sense, we just need to get to that lesson. Guys, you're doing fine. You can do better. And we need to help each other out. There's no question. But here's our world. Here's our resources. Here's what we've got to work with. We got to make room for each other. We've got to give each other the space and the ability to get by. If I've got 80% of the whole and you've got 20%, you're suffering, and I'm threatened at every moment because you're not going to curl up and die with your 20%. You're going to go, this isn't right. We need to. And so it's fascinating in how many hundreds of thousands of years mankind has been developing. We're not quite, and I think this is what is scaring people right now is technologically, we're shooting forward, but we're not shooting forward. So I was reading the other day the voice actors for games have said we'll strike, and I go, yeah, you'll strike. You've got a machine that seemingly can do everything you can do. Now, is that a great thing for the guy that needs to make the product? Sure, he doesn't have to pay that machine. He programs it once. He's got the world in his hands. You just put your audience out of work. Yeah. So how are they paying for your product if you've taken away their livelihoods? And nobody is thinking this crap through.
It's like when tactics, when technology eclipses tactics in war. And Charlemagne knew this. Napoleon saw it firsthand, and of course, in the Civil War, it was most evident, or maybe World War I.
Yeah.
Right. So you're still fighting the war tactically like you fought the last one. But now we've got the Gatling gun.
Right.
And now we have a rifled barrel, which is why they found the bodies stacked like cordwood in Shiloh, because a single bullet broke the line. Right. So they didn't have time to adjust to the tech. And I wonder if this armada we're talking about, 4.5 million podcasts, for instance, 32,000 alone on iHeart. What people need is you said it, an avatar, maybe a docent. We need a trusted guide.
Sure.
To say, that was a good boat over there. I took a ride on the good ship Really No Really. You know what? It's seaworthy.
Yeah.
The captain's trustworthy, and you'll probably learn something. Hop aboard. That stuff today, I think, is way more valuable than it was Thursday nights 20 years ago, because everybody knew there are 3 places to look for something that maybe I'll like.
And we're all going to experience it in the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
And talk about it the next day.
We're in different boats. We're going in different directions.
Yeah.
With different captains, with different trajectories. This one's saving the woolly mammoth in order to save the elephants. This one is trying to get money back from swindled clairvoyant victims. It's such a rich pageant.
Yeah.
And there's Pippin, like to your point, saying, God, maybe it'd be easier if I just stayed home and grew some corn or something.
Yeah.
Here's, I think, a good place to land the plane, or at least start to. I walked in at my house one day just in time to see Tony Robbins' face up on my big, giant TV, which I'd left on, just in time to hear him say, and the bottom line is, the more things you own, the more things own you. And I never thought much of Tony Robbins, really. I know him, nice guy, but I've always looked askance at that industry. But that thing hit me like a ton of bricks. And it made me realize, not for the first time, that some of the best advice you'll ever get might come from Donnie Clay, might come from a surprising situation.
Sure, yeah.
But early on, you mentioned twice in passing 40 years of therapy. Mm-hmm. So are you literally...
Yeah, and so I've tried therapy at various times throughout my life, and the trick is you have to find the person that you can...
Docent.
Yeah.
Right ship.
Right.
I found that person the first time after several attempts when I was 37. I stayed with her till I was about 47. Then I took a break. I had when I say therapy, I had other kind of gurus that I was exploring. And then I'm about to turn 65 in September. When I was 58, I called up my gal again and I said, I'd like to come back. And she said, well, okay, great. Is there a problem? I said, no, there's no problem. She said, well, what do you want to work on? I said, well, I've had a lot of avatars in my life. I've been a lot of different people. I have to get paid to play them, and sometimes I've just had to create. I created an avatar of Jason Alexander to protect Jay Greenspan, and I go, Nancy, I'm not sure I know what's the genuine one. And before I die, I'd like to know at least what the genuine one is. So I'd like to work with you to just figure out who am I, or who am I now? And that's what we've been doing for the last 7 years or so, and it's been the best 7 years of my life. It has delivered me to a place where I'm more or less finally comfortable in my skin. I had an acting teacher who I love dearly. He's a dear friend of mine named Larry Moss, and his big thing in class often would be with an actor who was struggling to go, you are enough. You're enough. And in my head, I would go, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Yeah. I am so not enough that if I don't keep making something here, they're going to find it out.
Yeah.
It's not that there is sometimes an arrogance connected to I am enough, because people will read it as I am everything, or I am complete, or I am great, or I am cooked, or I am... Mm-hmm. But what I mean is, if I can show up in a genuine way, I'm okay with the guy that shows up. And I think that takes work. I think there are very few people I've met that carry that and in a whole way through their whole life. And certainly not the folks in my business who I've gotten to know, whose lives have changed so dramatically and unexpectedly and fast. I was never, an A-lister. But this thing happened to me that if you take a 6-year-old scared to death kid and have crowds of people go, oh, George, whatever that is they're reacting to, I do not know what to do with that. I never, when I was thinking at age 12, I'd like to be an actor on Broadway, I wasn't thinking I'd like to be famous. Actors on Broadway are not famous. They're just working actors. Mm-hmm. I never was interested in celebrity. I was afraid of the crowd. Why
did you mention age 6? Was that random?
I had a significantly traumatic year when I was 6 years old. There were three kind of large things that happened to me that set me down a path for a long time. And I can tell you what they are very, quickly. I had an uncle who I was very attached to, emotionally attached to, and he died suddenly and prematurely. And they did something that Jewish families hardly ever do. They had an open casket funeral. And it was my first introduction to death. And there was this man that I adored in a box that was weird. And then they closed that box, and then they put that box in the ground and they buried it. And I was traumatized.
What was his name?
Abe. And Abe Levin was his name. Abe Levin, Uncle Abe.
I'm just thinking of the dog with the button.
Where's Abe? Where's Abe? Where's Abe? A few months after that, I was a latchkey kid. My parents both worked, and my siblings were much, much older than I was, so I grew up as more or less an only child. And I would come home from school every day at around 3:30, and I had a key, and I'd go to my house, and I'd be in my house until my mother got home about 3 hours later from work. I come home, and the door's open, and I open my door, and the entire house is gone. There's a couple of potted plants, there's a couple of pictures, but even the appliances are gone.
They took everything.
Everything. We were such an easy house to case because my father always went to work at this hour, my mother at this hour, and everybody was going to be gone a certain set of hours. They came with a moving van in moving outfits. The neighbor said, "We thought you were moving," right? We thought that you were all leaving. So I'm the one to walk in on this, and I immediately go to, my parents left. I'm gone.
Where's mom?
Where's mom? Where's mom? Where's mom? 3 months after that, my father, at age 55, has a massive coronary attack that put him in the hospital for 3 months. I didn't see him for 3 months and was being told that he could die, which means he'd be like Uncle Abe in the box in the ground. So those three events, back to back, literally back to back, in 1 year, here was the best indication. But when I was 5, I was a somewhat athletic kid, lean and mean. You could count my ribs, right? By the time I was 7, I was 35 pounds overweight.
Whoa.
And have fought it the rest of my life.
6 was a big year.
That was a big year.
A big year.
And that's why I suddenly went to magic that year too, because I was alone. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't stray out of the house very much. So what could I do in my house to sort of wrap myself in the illusion of having some power? Was make a card disappear or change or a coin vanish. And I went, ooh, I knew I didn't have powers, but I thought if I could do this, maybe I could appear powerful and that would keep me safe.
Forgive me, but
Yeah.
I need to know the rest of the second event because all I can see is 6-year-old Jay and the house is empty. You've come home. How long was it before, you
it was refilled?
No, like what happened that day?
I sat there until my mother came home.
You sat there for how long?
A couple hours.
Oh.
Does this not explain every single thing? Every single thing this Nancy person is dealing with? I mean, this is Nancy, if you're watching,
it took a long
it's called
time.
job security.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, it took a long time.
Wow.
So,
God.
Yeah. But, here's the thing that we all have some version of that. If it didn't happen at 6, it happened at 13. It happened at 18. It happened at 27. There are these sort of, the world will shock you every now and then. And the success of Seinfeld was a shock. It was like, what? Say what? What's happening? What do I have to be now? Because I'm not that.
But you have to become the George you described and all his neurosis. I mean, you immersed yourself in that character for a long time, and maybe even more potently, millions of people immerse themselves in that character.
Sure, yeah.
And so now they don't see Bob Patterson. They don't see Donnie Clay.
No.
They don't see the lead player in Forum. Fantastic, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Something familiar. He crushes that. They don't see Pippin.
Right.
They see George Costanza.
Absolutely.
And all of his his one-dimensionality and richness at the same time. So yeah, man, I can imagine. What was it? 11 years?
No, 9 seasons.
9 years.
Yeah.
9 years
Yeah.
of
9 years that has somehow stretched to 30
It never-
because the
it's-
damn thing doesn't go away.
Right.
go away.
Which is fantastic. And the joy of it, and we may have talked about it before, the joy of it is it delivered something to me that was part of the I'm not enough. My mom, bless her heart, always used to say to me, my hope for you is you live a life of service, that you're of service. She was a nurse and a nurse educator all her working life. And now I'm an actor and I'm going, well, this is not of service. I'm doing this because I seem to be okay at it and they're paying me. And, at the end of the night, people go, oh, yay, look at you. And I felt like, well, I didn't get there, Mom. Sorry, Largely Seinfeld-centric on this, although there have been some other things that have been equal to it. But my fan mail started to change, and my interactions with people started to change about 5 or 6, 7 years into Seinfeld, where people would come up and go, I was going through something really hard. Really hard. I lost a parent. I lost a child. I was ill. I was serving overseas, and I was joyless. There was no laughter in my life. And I would put on your show, and not only your show, but you, man, you gave me some laughter again. And I got through it. And I went, service.
You bet.
Service. And I've come to cherish those interactions, which is why when I go out and do Q&A shows and whatnot, people go, are you sick of George? And I go, I'll never be sick of George. I'm always grateful for George. But, I would rather not have to perform him again because I think it might be less charming at 65. But the fact that something I've done in my selfish pursuit to survive in this world has had that impact on people. And that to the point where you are willing to come up to me and say, you helped me. I will never wish that away. And I will never get sick of somebody saying, thanks. And I go, no, thank you. you gave me that life.
I deliberately didn't ask you any specific questions about Seinfeld because I can only imagine the amount of time you've spent.
Well, it's also, I
discussing
probably
it.
don't know the answers on most of them. Because when people go, hey, remember when you did? And I go, did I do that?
I do not. I do remember in the middle of season 3, everything changed.
Yeah.
I do remember
it did,
the contest.
Master of my own domain. Is
Oh
that
my
what you're
God.
referring to?
Yeah, that turned our fate around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it made me feel a whole lot better about rubbing one off. I'll tell you that. It
That
really
was,
did.
see, service.
I'm trying to think of a way to drag your mom into it, but I'm not going to because it's just not cool. You just said a second ago that everybody has a version of your 6-year-old life, and I know that's true. But a lot of people have an aversion to looking back and unpacking that stuff. And I'm of two minds of it. I lean toward Kierkegaard, right? The unexamined life. Not much point, really. And you take this as a compliment because I really mean it. Your curiosity about everything from bathroom stalls to dogs that
Hit buttons.
wonder where their owners went. That's all really poignant. But your curiosity about yourself and where you've been and where you're going, I think that's useful for people. And this is not a PSA either. This is we're just trying to entertain ourselves by and large.
Yeah.
But if the best part of Bob Patterson were to leave our modest little passengers on our little boat in this giant armada with something worth clinging to,
Yes.
what would it be?
I think I'm going to quote another great healer, teacher. And that was Mel Brooks, who Bob Patterson would have learned a lot from, who on one of his albums played a psychiatrist. And as that psychiatrist, he said, I once treated the entire Israeli army. No, that's the other one. That was Goodbye and Good Luck. He said, I once treated a woman nerves. She would tear paper. Always tearing paper to shreds because of the nerves, tearing paper. And I helped her. I cured her. And Carl Reiner would say, you cured her? How did you cure her? I said to her, don't tear paper. Why are you tearing paper?
Bob Newhart did that, didn't he? Where he's like, just stop it. Just don't do that.
Don't do that.
Stop
Yeah,
it.
don't tear paper.
Don't
what I would say
paper.
to people is, don't tear paper. A lot of us, this is the serious turn on that. A lot of when I direct now, I say to my collaborators, yeah, I hear you. I hear there's an issue. Don't make a problem. Solve a problem. There's always going to be a problem. You telling me there's a problem, yes, please, by all means, inform me there's a problem and we'll do it together. But could you not have addressed that? You're basically bringing me your problem and you want me to solve your problem. Do you really feel you can't do it? I can do it for you, but I'm going to tell you to do something. So why don't you solve it? Solve the problems. There is no problem every problem we have individually, in our families, in our communities, in this world, is a problem we've probably contributed to the making of.
Sure.
So solve it. Just stop it. Stop tearing paper. I decided a couple of years ago, I'm going to change my social media feeds. I'm not going to even stop and look at the stuff that is designed to make me upset or angry, because it's not true. Yeah, things like that are but that's not the truth. So now I watch things like puppies, or there's a couple of guys out there who go up to people that are struggling and go, hey, do you have $1?
Yeah.
Can I get $1? And if the person is kind enough to give them the $1, they turn around and give them $1,000. And they go, you helped me when you had nothing. I want to help you. And you start liking those things in your feed, and wait till you see what your feed looks like 6 months later. I can actually go to social media to go, oh my God, there are so many good people in this world. They're out there. They're just out there doing, and the day it's not true, the day that there are more really destructive people than wonderful people, we'll all know it. No one will stop at the red lights. Civilization will fall apart. There are really great people out there just trying to live their lives, and I am so sick and tired. Nothing is ever created out of anger, fear, or hate. Nothing.
Nothing good.
And I go to people sometimes who have a lot of that in their lives, and I go, really? You've got a blink on this planet. I don't know what comes after this, but this is what we've got here. You really want to spend it doing this? It's that forgiveness guy going,
yeah, give yourself a break.
If that guy has a problem, he's got a problem. Let him go. Be the best version of yourself.
There are many boats in the Armada. Really No Really is a good one. You should hop aboard. There's not much else to say about your career.
Bless your heart. Appreciate it.
You're a polymath. But for grins, Google Forum, Jerome Robbins. Watch him on the stage, man.
Are you coming down to La Mirada? I'm growing the beard for Fiddler on the Roof at La Mirada.
Oh, really?
In November. Come on.
Buried the lead. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Tevye?
Yeah.
All your life you've been
I've been waiting. It's the only reason my mother let me be an actor. She said, are you going to do Tevye on Broadway? I did, but only 10 minutes a night in Jerome Robbins. So I said, all right, one more time. We're going to really
Is it
do
true
this
that you sang Sunrise Sunset for Jerome Robbins as the sun was setting?
Yeah. We were at Michael Bennett's studio at 14th, 17th Broadway? 890 Broadway. Mm-hmm. I did not want to audition for the show. I didn't know what the hell I could possibly do in that show. I am not a Jerome Robbins dancer by any stretch of the imagination. My friend Emmanuel Lazenberg was the producer, and he said, I really want you to audition. I really do. I owed him a favor. He said, I'm calling in the favor. You don't have to do the show, but you got to meet him. You got to talk to him. You got to audition for him. I went, all right. And I go down to meet the legendary Jerome Robbins, and the first thing out of his mouth is, why the f am I having so much trouble getting you to audition for my show? And the arrogant avatar of Jason goes, well, with all due respect, sir, I don't want to be in your show. And his jaw drops and he goes, no, you don't understand. I said, it's going to be magnificent. I'm going to be the first guy online to buy a ticket, but I can't dance your material. And this is essentially a dance show. It's a review of your great numbers that you've created.
You're
and
like
all
wanted
those
a
shows
narrator, right? Sort of like a...
And I said, my friend Manny Eisenberg keeps telling me you want a narrator. And I go, that doesn't feel like an actor's gig to me. It feels like, a celebrity gig of some kind. And it just... Anyway, we talk for a minute and he goes, do you know Fiddler on the Roof? I went, I'm a 29-year-old Jew. Yes, I know. And I'm an actor. Yes, I know Fiddler on the Roof. And he goes, do you know Sunrise Sunset? I said, yes, I do. He goes, go sing it. And I go over, and the only spot that you're going to, but I have this wall of, 15-foot windows behind me as the sun is setting out on the lower part of New York. And I've, essentially been rehearsing this thing since I was 4. And I start singing Sunrise Sunset with a little bit of a Hebraic accent. And I'm not looking at him, and I finish the number, and I look over, and there's a tear rolling down his cheek, and I went, oh, this is not going to be good. And we had a long conversation, and he was actually lovely. He confided. I had done a little bit of writing when I was working for Manny Eisenberg and Neil Simon, and they enjoyed it, and Manny thought of me as a writer, and he had pitched to Jerry Robbins, this kid could help you figure out how to connect the songs and what the evening will be. And he could probably write it, and then he'll play whatever he writes. So Jerry Robbins said, look, Manny's right. I don't know how to connect this stuff. I don't know what makes it a night. He says, you're a smart guy. You're certainly a talented guy. You would play Pseudolus. You would play Tevye. You would play those character roles, be an actor. But if it's not enough for you, I'll make you a deal. If you take the show and get me to opening night. If you're not happy after opening night with what you do, I don't care what your contract says, I'll let you out of the show.
Wow.
And I knew it was going to be a 6-month rehearsal process. So this was a big commitment, no matter what.
6 months rehearsing?
Months. Yeah, it was the
People
longest
should know. That's
period.
extraordinary.
Yeah, usually 6 weeks is a big deal. And I said, well, this is arguably the greatest director of musical theater, certainly of the 20th century. You want to direct, Jason. Maybe it wouldn't be stupid to sit at the feet of such a person.
Maybe pick something up.
So thinking it will do nothing for me as an actor, but it could be rewarding in other ways, I said yes.
And how'd that turn out?
It did. I won the Tony. But that was all a surprise. But yeah,
man.
most of the good things in my life I fall ass backwards into.
Awesome.
I love when people go, "How do you pick your roles?" And I go, "As soon as I do, I'll let you know."
How old were you when you sang for him? You're 29?
28 or 29, yeah.
You're going to be 65 when this opens?
Mm-hmm.
That's the line, folks. That's the reason to stare into your belly button every so often and ask questions. The man sings Sunrise Sunset 29, 39, 49, 59, 35, 36 years ago. And now he's playing that role here in L.A. in November. So what's the name of the theater? Where do you get tickets?
La Mirada.
Good God.
Is it the La Mirada Playhouse?
I think it's the La Mirada Playhouse. It's Kathy Rigby and her husband Tom McCoy own it.
Oh, wow.
Everybody
Fantastic.
remember Kathy Rigby?
Yeah.
Still
nimble
looks
little minx.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Unbelievable.
And could probably do a tumbling run if she had to.
Yeah, you never know when you're going to have to do a tumbling run.
Right?
You really don't.
We're putting it in Fiddler.
Is La Mirada Theater, just for fact checking. And while I'm doing that, I just want to say that it was actually, what was the town that you said? It's New London was the town.
New London, Connecticut. That's correct.
Connecticut.
Right.
And they do that because on September 6th, 1781, Arnold led British troops to New London and burned the town
That's
down.
right.
Never
and
liked
they're
that guy.
pissed.
And they're still pissed.
They have not gotten over it.
You think you had a bad time at 6?
Right?
These people.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, if I could burn those 6 guys that robbed my house in effigy, I'd do it every year. But
Who did you play? Perchik?
were you a Perchik?
Yeah. At a dinner
Let's
theater.
see that.
Yeah.
Miracle the Miracle. No, that's the other one.
No.
I used to tell myself that I had everything,
I
but
don't
that was
even
only
remember.
half true.
That's the one. That's the one.
I was opposite Danielle, who I was dating at the time, and then a very unfortunate thing.
Oh boy.
Yeah, oh
Yeah.
boy.
Oh, that was bad.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
she
After
slipped
you left
away.
Anatevka, yeah, that's
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
It all went south.
Good.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, to sum it all up, I thought there would be more plume.
Yes.
But nevertheless, your plumage made an impression. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you, Michael.
Beautiful
Thank you, Chuck.
plumage.
Beautiful plumage.
I'm not talking about the bloody plumage.
See you next week, folks.
If you like what you heard,
And even if you don't,
won't you please,
pretty please subscribe. Well, I hate to beg and I hate to plead, but please, pretty freaking please, please subscribe.